Yep. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Barry Lambert. I serve as the interim provost and executive vice president for academic affairs, and it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you first to tonight's event. Education Excellence Week is off to what I think is a great start. I've been to several of the events, and I know there's a lot more throughout the week. I just want to take a minute to thank all of the faculty who are participating in that event. You know, the way that we gather and learn from each other about how to better serve our students is what really unites us here at the university. And so I was really pleased where I've been and tonight to see so many people who are genuinely interested in improving what we do and how we serve our students. I also want to take just a minute and thank the CEE staff, the Center for Educational Excellence staff, and the Last Lecture Committee who helps, really has a pretty tough task of selecting the speaker for this event from some very, very prestigious nominees. At this point, it is my pleasure to welcome the 16th president of Tarleton State University, Dr. James Hurley, to the podium to provide a welcome.
Thank you, Provost Lambert. All right, thank you, Provost. And I echo what Provost Lambert shared. I, too, want to thank the committee for job well done. And each and every year, every single year, I walk away thinking just how amazed and how our faculty, but how blessed we are to have individuals that share their intellect with us and their time and their talents. But when I saw Dr. Gandhi, I was really excited because I know of few humans that loves humanity more. In particular, something that's very near and dear to me, as all of you know, growing up in deep Appalachia, it was very rural where I grew up. And so I have a heart for rural America. And so does Dr. Gandhi. And the fact that she is the co-director of our Center for, I think it's public, or for rural resilience, but to see and to have the conversations, to see her work, and every time I'm engaged in a conversation with her, it always starts with the word students. This is in the best interest of our students, or our students will, their lives, their learning, their professional careers after Tarleton State will be enhanced because of. And it's never what can look at what I'm doing or this is about me. It's always when you have a conversation with her, and those of you that are here, you know her so well, it's always about someone else. And her expertise every single year continues to grow because she believes in the power of professional development, and she believes in leaving the world better than she found it. And so I'm really, really thankful that we have her presenting this last lecture. Now, I am not going to introduce her because that will be more formal from our provost, but I just want to say, Dr. Gandhi, thank you for all that you do to make Tarleton State, Texas, and the United States and the world a better place. And your heart and your passion for people is so evident. And so thank you for the research that you're conducting. Thank you for the teaching in the classroom. And then thank you for your heart of a practitioner going out and sharing that with not only your students, but everyone that's involved. So we're really, really proud, and we're thankful you're here. And I'm excited about this last lecture, but thankfully it's not your last lecture here. So well done.
Thank you, Dr. Hurley. You know, Tarleton State University held its first last lecture in 2014. It was following the model made popular by Dr. Randy Pausch of Carnegie Mellon. And each of these speakers has been given the same prompt. And that prompt is, if you had one last chance to impart wisdom from your life experiences, what would you say? Over the years, we've been honored to hear many last lecture presentations from Tarleton's most distinguished educators. And I'm not sure if any are in the audience tonight, but if they are, I would ask you to stand so that we can recognize you. Are there any here tonight? Yeah. It's no secret that this year, Dr. Subi Gandhi has been selected as our distinguished speaker. Dr. Gandhi is a professor of public health and co-director of the Center for Rural Resilience. She's dedicated her career to advancing health and well-being in underserved and rural communities. Her expertise spans behavioral and mental health, student health, aging, and disaster epidemiology, with a strong commitment to community-engaged research and strengthening rural health systems. Please help me welcome to the stage Dr. Subi Gandhi.
Thank you, Dr. Hurley and Dr. Lambert. Thank you so much. I'm here today. It's unbelievable. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here, those that are here in person and joining me online, for showing up to support me as I deliver this lecture. I want to acknowledge that being here may have meant postponing your own celebrations, stepping away from your children's games, or rearranging moments that matter deeply in your own lives. This is not something I take lightly. Your presence is a gift. It reflects your kindness, your generosity, and the space you've made for me in your lives. To look out and see you here, it means more than I can fully express. Thank you for choosing to be here today, for holding space for me, and for being part of this moment. When I was asked to give this lecture, I didn't reach for my research files. I didn't even open my CV. Instead, I went back to a very specific moment, a quiet morning in the fall of 2014. I remember walking into a brand new office at Tarleton State University, Stephenville campus. My department was based in Fort Worth, and the public health program was set to begin in Stephenville. There was no established path, no blueprint, no clear roadmap for me, just a desk, 4 walls, and a single honest thought. Okay, now what? I thought about every time since then that I have had to figure it out. And I thought about what actually held me together through all of that figuring. That is what is today about. Today, I want to share with you my architecture of resilience, not as a theoretical construct that we know and teach to students, but as something I have lived, something built in boarding school and hallways of Nepal and India, in a father's relentless hunger for knowledge, in a husband who never once questioned my aspirations, in students who reminded me every semester why my work matters, and in the rural communities of Texas who trusted us enough to let us serve them. My talk is called Rising Together, Framework for Resilience Through Empathy and Shared Purpose, and I mean every word of that. Rising together, that phrase is not poetry, it is a policy position. It is research methodology, it is a leadership philosophy. I'm Dr. Subi Gandhi, Professor of Public Health and co-director for the Center for Rural Resilience. And for the last 12 years, a small builder in this place. I bleed purple, and I'm honored, deeply honored, to be standing here with you today. To Dr. James Hurley and the First Lady who couldn't be here, she's with her kids, coaching them. What a great lady. Thank you for your presence today and for your leadership. And to Dr. Barry Lambert, I have had the privilege of knowing you for over a decade. Congratulations on your well-deserved appointment as provost of this great university. To Dr. Amy Schaus and Dr. Smith, where are you? Great. Thank you for your leadership and for consistently prioritizing faculty support and innovation. To the selection committee, thank you for this extraordinary honor. And to every dean, department head, faculty member, staff member, and student who has been part of my journey at Tarleton State University, you are the reason this talk exists. Above all, to Viral, my husband, Viraj and Sheena, my family in America, my family in Nepal, my mom and my two brothers, and my friends near and far. You are my foundation. Everything else is built upon you. Every building has a foundation you cannot see. The floors, the walls, the windows, those are visible. But what keeps the entire structure standing is buried underneath the surface. Today I'm going to show you mine. My story does not start in Texas. It starts in the foothills of the Himalayas. I grew up navigating boarding schools across Nepal and India. Constant change was my childhood. New schools, new cities, new languages, new social codes to crack. Every few years, a new world to decode, and no guarantee that anyone would help me decode it. For most children, that kind of disruption may be destabilizing. For me, and I did not understand this much later in my life, it became the most important education I ever received. Not because I was unusually resilient by nature, but because I had no other choice than learn how to belong. And here is what I discovered. Belonging is a choice, not a circumstance. You can walk into a room where no one looks like you and still build a bridge. I did not always feel confident doing it. I was not always welcome doing it, but I learned that the bridge does not have to be offered to you. You can be the one to build it. Multilingual, multicultural, and deeply curious about people. That is how I arrived at every new school, and later every new institution, every new grant meeting, every new community. A childhood shaped by movement taught me that home is not a place, it is a posture, and you carry it with you all the time. Now, the philosophy behind that lesson came directly from my parents. My family had a very specific approach to raising children. Their mantra was, and I mean this almost literally, go figure it out. It sounds tough, and it was, but it was not harsh. Actually, it was freeing, because underneath those 4 words was a much stronger message for me. What it meant was, we trust you, we believe you are capable, and we love you too much to rob you of the growth that comes from solving your own problems. Every time I was dropped into a new situation with minimal guidance, something unexpected happened. I didn't just survive it, I built new capabilities. I built confidence. I built the ability to adapt faster than the people around me. Struggle was my classroom, and long before any university was. And I want to say this clearly, especially to the students that are here or watching. Being told to figure it out is not abandonment. Sometimes it is the highest form of confidence someone can place in you. The only question is, do you trust yourself enough to receive it? So independence became my greatest asset, not because I was never afraid. I was often terrified, but I had been trained by life, by family, by circumstance to move through fear rather than wait for it to pass. I lost my father this past September. He was a self-made man in the truest sense of the word. No inherited advantages, no safety net, no one opening doors for him. He built his life through sheer will, and he carried within him what I can only describe as a literal, relentless hunger for knowledge, books, ideas, questions, growth. He never stopped learning. He never accepted the limitations that others tried to impose on him. He modeled perseverance, not as a dramatic gesture, but as a daily, quiet discipline, every single day. His greatest gift to me was not material. It was a belief, deep and unshakable, that learning is the only wealth worth chasing. The knowledge is the one thing no one can take from you. That is, that it compounds over time in ways money never can. I stand here in front of you as a professor because he believed knowledge was the only wealth worth chasing. And now I carry that hunger. I bring it into my every classroom that I teach, every grant proposal, every community conversation that I have with my rural communities. Every time I push a student to go farther away, further than what they thought they could. Dad, this one is for you. And then there is my mother. If it was my father that gave me the hunger, my mother gave me the direction. She never asked for a single material thing in her life, not once. Her entire existence, every sacrifice, every choice, every act of quiet endurance has been a single-minded investment in one thing, her children's futures. What strikes me even now is the unconditional nature of it. No conditions, no complaints, no keeping score, just a quiet, unwavering belief that we would succeed, long before there was any evidence we would. She is still that focused today, in her 70s, still present, still attentive, still the first to call and the last to give up. I rise because she never stopped believing. When people ask me how I built a public health program from scratch, how I maintained research productivity through uncertain years, how I led through difficulty, the honest answer is this: I had a mother who showed me what sustained commitment looks like, and I just follow her example. This is what I was talking about. This is a family that shows up across time zones, across life chapters, across grief and celebration. A table, wherever we happen to be, is the unit of measurement for what matters. I carry this table into everything I do, into my classroom, into my research, into the Center for Rural Resilience now. The belief that gathering together, breaking bread, sharing struggle, celebrating small wins is not incidental to the work. It is the work. Community is not a strategy to me. It is a table you keep setting, even when you are not sure who will show up at the table. This is one of the last pictures we took with my dad in spring of 2025. So let's talk about the climb. First, let me tell you about a blank canvas. In 2014, I arrived at Tarleton State University as an inaugural public health faculty member. There was not a public health colleague I could turn to as a mentor. No grant pipeline. No community partnerships to inherit. Just a blank canvas. And a deep sense of responsibility. This part is about what I painted on that canvas. When I arrived here, here is what my job actually looked like, or what I did. Build courses from scratch, understand what rural health actually looked like in North Central Texas, not from a textbook, but from showing up. Establish a research identity and a grant pipeline at the same time. Form community partnerships. while still learning this landscape myself, and teach full course loads through all of it. Was it overwhelming? Yes, absolutely. Was there friction? Absolutely. Was there noise, the kind that makes you question whether you belong? More than I care to admit. But here is what I kept coming back to. Go figure it out. So I did. I became a builder in this institution, not just for curriculum, but for culture. Because founding a program is not just about course sequences and accreditation requirements. It is about establishing what feels like to belong in this field, in this community. It is about ensuring that when a student leaves my classroom, they do not carry knowledge. Sorry, they do not only carry knowledge, they carry confidence with them. And the practical tools to lead with empathy in communities that need them. That is what I was building. That is what we build together here at Tarleton. Academia loves to talk about rank progression in terms of metrics, publications, grant dollars, teaching evaluations, service hours, and those things matter. I earned them, and I'm proud of them. But what this timeline actually represents is not a collection of outputs. It is a decade of becoming, of being tested and refined, of learning when to push and when to hold, of discovering that I truly believe about public health, about my education, about leadership, not in the abstract, but in practice. 2014, a blank canvas and a deep breath. 2020, tenure, a signal that this thing we were building, it was real. 2025, full professor, co-director of the Center for Rural Resilience, something built where there was nothing at one point in time. Each rank wasn't just a title. It was proof that the blank canvas could become something real. And I want every early career person in this room to hear this. The decade goes fast. Not in the moment, of course. In the moment, it can feel impossibly slow. But when you look back, you will be stunned by how much you built. Trust the process, stay mission-focused, and keep building. Building a program means more than writing a course syllabi. Let me show you what it actually looked like. On the curriculum side, I designed degree pathways grounded in real health realities of rural and community settings, not the sanitized textbook version, the actual landscape of what our graduates would walk into. I created study abroad opportunities with colleagues because I know from my own life that crossing a border changes everything in you that no classroom can replicate. I wanted our students to feel that. I integrated mentorship into research. My students did not sit on the sidelines as observers. They were co-investigators. They had their fingerprints on their work, or our shared work. We built experiential learning, real public health problems, real communities, real stakes. And underneath all of it, we established a culture of belonging and health, where students who arrived uncertain left knowing that this field has a place for them. And they had something irreplaceable to offer it. Being a founding member or a founding faculty wasn't about curriculum. It was more about founding a culture of belonging. The photos here tell part of that story. Students at the Taj Mahal, students in the mountains of Nepal. Students learn that their education does not stop at the Texas state line. That is what we build here together. And I'm profoundly proud of every student who has and been a part of my journey and their journey, or our journey together. And this institution has allowed me to take risks with students for their personal and professional growth. Thank you for that opportunity. My research sits at the intersection of where vulnerability meets geography. I want to unpack that because it explains not just what I study, why I study. In rural communities, vulnerability is compounded by place. If you are poor and rural, your access to care is drastically limited. If you are aging and rural, social isolation is not an inconvenience. It is a health hazard. If you are in a mental health crisis and rural, there may be no provider within 60 miles. And if a disaster hits your rural community, your community may be on its own for days before meaningful help arrives. So I study and practice epidemiology, population patterns of disease, injury, and disability in underserved communities. I study behavioral and mental health, how social and cultural factors shape outcomes. I study student health, my most precious research line, because the young people in our classrooms are also navigating life crises, food insecurity, and mental health challenges. I study aging, disaster preparedness, and rural health systems. The work I'm most profoundly proud of is not the work I did alone. It is the work we did together. The photo behind me is a story. I'm fortunate to work with professionals from different fields, from public health, from education, from community organizations, gathered around a shared question: how do we actually change outcomes for the people we serve? Interdisciplinary collaboration, students embedded in research as co-investigators, not spectators, community-engaged practice that translates findings into real policy and real programs, representation on statewide boards, state-level service that amplifies what we are learning here at Tarleton State into conversations that shape policy. Awards mean something, but they are not the point. The point is whether the work landed where it needed to. For me, recognition matters less than impact. The metric I care about is, did it change anything for anyone or someone out there? I want to talk about something that does not get enough airtime in academic life. It's the noise. In institutions, especially in high-stake environments, there is constant noise. We navigate everything from small tensions to more complex conflicts, often driven by demanding schedules, competing priorities, and our personal ambitions. There is the pressure to be everywhere at once. Emails that could have been conversations, meetings that could have been emails, and so on. It's a steady hum of activity that can easily pull us away from what truly matters to us. Early in my career, I let a lot of that noise sink in me, and it cost me, not just in time, but in clarity, in energy, in the ability to think deeply about the things that actually mattered. Over time, I developed a filter, and my filter has exactly one question: does this add to my purpose, or is it just noise? The answer is purpose. If the answer is purpose, I give it my full attention. I protect that space fiercely. If the answer is noise, I release it, not with anger, not with resentment, but with intention. I let it go. The signal is my mission, my integrity, and the people who rely on you. When you learn to quiet the static, you can finally hear it clearly. I want to pause the narrative here and pivot for a minute, because before I bring you into the support system that made my climb possible, I need to leave you with two principles that I have carried as non-negotiables throughout my career. The first, do not normalize bad behavior. In institutions, in teams, in communities, naming bad behavior is an act of care, not aggression. When we look away, when we observe dysfunction in silence, when we decide it is not our place to say something, we become participants in the culture we are trying to change. The longer we normalize dysfunction, the harder it becomes to build cultures of real belonging. This takes courage. I won't pretend otherwise, but courage is a muscle, and it grows with use. The second is do not enable bad behavior. Enabling through silence, through over-accommodation, through misplaced loyalty, causes compounding harm. It harms the person whose behavior goes unchecked. It harms everyone around them. And it harms the institutions we have worked so hard to build. True mentorship, true leadership, true collaboration requires holding people accountable with compassion, yes, but accountable. Integrity to me is not what you do when people are watching. It is what you refuse to do when no one is. I have talked about where I came from. I have talked about what I built. Now I want to talk about who made it possible. Because resilience is never a solo act, and I would be doing you disservice if I let you leave today thinking that I did all this by myself. None of that I have described, none of the building, none of the research, none of the late nights and early mornings, none of it would have been possible without my husband, Viral, who is here today. I call him my rock, and I mean that with full precision. In more than 30 years of figuring it out, he never once questioned my aspirations, not once. When I said I wanted to pursue a terminal degree, when I said I wanted to take my students abroad, when I said I wanted to build a public health program from scratch, he did not ask if I was sure. He asked, what do you need? He gave me the freedom to take professional risks, stability when grant cycles were uncertain, and the financial ground felt shaky. A home that was genuinely restful, a space where I could exhale, recharge, and come back to work ready. And a partner who celebrated every single milestone, those small ones that only we knew about, as much as the visible ones. So resilience is easy when you know someone is holding the rope when you climb. To my husband, thank you for 30 plus years of holding the rope for me. I hope I have made the climb worth climbing. And then there are my children, Viraj and Sheena. You grew up in the halls of this university in every sense. You witnessed the seminars, the grant deadlines, the community events, the late evenings when I was at the kitchen table, writing and rewriting and trying to get the words right. You did not just tolerate my work, you absorbed it, you supported it, you gave it meaning. You both thoughtfully adjusted your schedules, your expectations, your needs in ways that a parent only fully appreciates in retrospect. And I do not take that lightly. I never have. You are my greatest joy and the reason I wanted to make the world a better place. When I think about why I care so deeply about fairness, about rural communities, about belonging, about building systems that actually work for people, I think of you. I think about the world you are inheriting. And I ask myself, did I do enough to make it worthy for you or worthy of you? I hope I did. I'm still trying. I also want to talk about my students because mentorship has been one of the greatest sustaining gifts of the decade. What I have tried to give, access to real research, not just textbook theory, honest feedback with care, not cruelty, pathways into professional networks and conferences they might not have found on their own, and most importantly, the belief that they belong in this field. That last one is not a small thing. There are many students who arrive in our classrooms with extraordinary potential and very little evidence that the world expects anything of them. The greatest thing I can do as a mentor is to see them before they see themselves, or at least I make an effort. But here is what I have discovered. Mentorship is not a one-way transaction. My students give back to me more than they know. They are also my support system. They remind me why this work matters. They bring fresh perspectives that sharpen my own thinking. And every time I watch one of them find their calling, step into their power, present at a conference, publish their first paper, land their first professional job, I feel something I can only describe as profound privilege. The profound privilege of watching someone find their calling that never gets old, not once. Now let me bring you into the work that gets me out of bed every single day. Not the publications, not the grants, the mission. My love for rural communities. Rural communities are not afterthoughts. They are the backbone of Texas. They are the places where people have lived for generations, where families are rooted, where identity is tied to land and community and tradition. And they are profoundly underserved. Consider what we know here. 20% of Americans live in rural Texas, but only 10% of physicians serve them. Nearly a quarter of Americans report having mental illness, and rural communities bear a disproportionate share of that burden. 60% of rural counties do not have a single mental health provider. Age-adjusted mortality rates in rural populations run 20% higher than urban. These are just not abstract numbers. These are people. These are your neighbors. And for many of you in this room, these may be your families. When you choose to serve rural communities, you are not just choosing a research agenda. You are making a moral claim about whose life matters. Because when you serve rural communities, you don't just improve health outcomes, you sustain entire ways of life. This is what it looks like in practice. As a public health professor, an epidemiologist, a community educator, and now the center co-director, I view my role through 5 interconnected lenses: a catalyst, empowering rural leaders and community members or champions to identify and drive solutions from within their own communities, not imposed from the outside. Educator, creating experiential learning where students are active participants in real public health problems, not passive observers. Bridge, connecting Tarleton's academic expertise to the people and places that need it most. That gap between what we know and what reaches communities is not inevitable. It is bridgeable, and we are the bridge. Researcher, grant-funded work in epidemiology, behavioral health, aging, disaster preparedness that produces evidence that can actually be used. And advocate, representing rural health needs on statewide boards and in policy conversations, so that the communities we serve have a voice in rooms where decisions are made. I believe when communities rise, we ascend alongside them. This is a conviction I hold deeply. The community already knows what it needs. My job, or our job, is not to arrive with solutions. It is to arrive with questions, with listening, with the humility to recognize that local knowledge is real knowledge, that the expertise of a grandmother who has lived in a county for 70 years is just as valid as a publication, a peer-reviewed publication. Our model is built on co-creation, solutions developed with communities, not delivered to them, intentional listening before action, evidence that reaches practitioners and policymakers, not just other academics, ongoing feedback loops that keep the work grounded, and a commitment to elevating community voices alongside academic ones. So my role is that of a catalyst, not director. The community already knows what it needs. This philosophy has shaped every grant I have written, every partnership I have built over the years. We go in to learn as much as to teach, and we always leave something behind that belongs to the community, not to us. I want to close this particular section with something that sits at the intersection of my research and my philosophy, something I believe is one of the most undervalued concepts in public health and in leadership: belonging. We know from robust research that loneliness carries a mortality risk comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Let that sink in for a minute. Isolation is not a soft problem. It is a clinical one. We know that where you live shapes your health as powerfully as your genetics. Rural place is therefore a social determinant of health, not a background condition, but an active, measurable force on health outcomes. We know that communities with strong social cohesion recover faster from disasters, illness, and economic disruption. Belonging literally builds resilience. It is not a metaphor. It is the data. And we know that healthcare systems that communities do not trust do not get used. Trust must be earned, and it starts with showing up consistently, honestly, over time. This is not just my research agenda. It is my leadership philosophy. It is how I try to show up for my students, my colleagues, my community partners, and for this university. Now the framework. We have talked about where I came from, who shaped me, what I built, who made it possible, and why this work matters. Now I want to give you something to take it with you. A framework, not a theory, a practice. Let me start by dismantling the most dangerous myths in our culture. That resilience means doing it alone, that showing struggle is weakness, that you either have it or you don't, that it means never breaking down, that toughness equals suppressing your emotions. Every single one of those beliefs, I believe, is wrong or misleading. Here is the reality. Resilience is relational. It lives in community, not in isolation. Naming your struggle builds trust and connection. It does not diminish you. Resilience is a practiced skill that grows over time. It does not mean you never break down. It means you rebuild every time when you do. And resilience includes knowing when to ask for help and having that courage to do it. In other words, resilience is not a trait you are born with. It is an architecture you build deliberately. You design it, you reinforce it, you stress test it, and when it fails, and most likely it will, you rebuild with better materials. I also want to say something about empathy, because it gets dismissed as soft when it is. In fact, the most rigorous form of leadership available to us. Empathy is not about being nice. It is a strategic practice. Intentional listening before action. This is not delay. It is the most efficient path to relevant solutions. Leaders who listen first build faster alignment than those who dictate. Naming the need, calling out what others are feeling before diving into what to do about it. This is not therapy, it is acknowledgement. and acknowledgement accelerates trust at a rate that no memo or town hall can match. Genuinely sharing power, co-creating solutions rather than consulting after the fact, and calling it collaboration. People know the difference. Staying accountable, honoring the commitments you make with empathy. Empathy without accountability is just sympathy. It does not move anything. And modeling vulnerability, because leaders who admit uncertainty make it safe for everyone else to do the same. Psychological safety is not a nice to have. It is the precondition for innovation, because empowering others not only furthers institutional objectives, it enhances personal and professional growth. So I try to lead with empathy, not despite our expertise, but we need it because of it. Individual achievement is real and it matters, but it has a ceiling, shared purpose. That is where transformation lives. When a team shares purpose, something structural changes. Decisions get faster because the criteria are clear. Conflict shrinks because disagreements are about means, not about mission. Energy compounds because everyone's efforts is pointed in the same direction. People who work toward a shared mission stay committed through adversity that would better scatter self-interest groups. No individual achieves systemic change alone. Shared purpose turns personal work into population-level impact. And here is what I have observed over and over in classrooms, in communities, in research partnerships. Shared purpose is the most reliable generator of genuine belonging. When people know they are working toward something meaningful together, belonging stops being a program. It becomes a natural byproduct of the work. At its essence, co-creating solutions, elevating varied perspectives, and fortifying resilience. That is the architecture, and it is available to every single person in this room and listening online. I want to speak directly to every student in the room and who are listening, and also to every person who is figuring out what their career and their life is going to be about. One, your lived experience is an asset. It's not a liability. The places you come from, the challenges you've survived, the perspectives you carry, bring all of it into the room. It is not baggage. It is fuel. Two, find your filter early. Decide what matters and protect that focus fiercely. Everyone will have an opinion about what you should be doing with your time and with your energy. Only you know the signal. Three, relationships are the work, not just the research, not just the grants, not just the publications, the people. Build those relationships with the same rigor you bring to your data. Four, you will not always feel ready. Do it anyway. Competence follows courage almost every time. Five, serve something bigger than yourself. That is where the resilience lives. The work that sustains you over decades is almost never purely self-serving. It is work that connects your gifts to the world's needs. And finally, six, find your rock and be a rock for someone else. I think I skipped this one. Sorry about that. Let me leave you with the Ascension Rule, the three-part framework that has grounded me over the past 12 years, and one I share with you in the hope that it offers strength and clarity in your own journey. One, hold your integrity. Know what you stand for. Never let the noise erode your values, even when it's costly, and especially when it's costly. Your integrity is the foundation that everything else is built on. Without it, no title, no credential, no achievement means anything. Number 2, cancel the noise. Ask relentlessly whether what you're doing or you're giving attention to actually serves your mission. If it doesn't, release it. Protect your signal. The signal is your mission, your people, your purpose. Protect it the way you would protect anything precious. Number 3, lean on your rock. Resiliency is never a solo act. Know who holds the rope while you climb. Show up for them with the same faithfulness they show up for you. And be that person for someone else who hasn't found their rock yet. Those 3 things, integrity, signal, and community, are the architecture of resilience, not as a theory, as a practice, as a daily choice. Because as humans, we are never meant to rise alone. Because when our communities rise, we ascend alongside them. This is the truth I want to leave you with. It took me 12 years at this institution and many of my life experiences to understand that rising is not a solitary achievement. It is a collective one. When our families rise, we rise. When our students rise, we rise. When our rural neighbors rise, we rise. When our institution rises, we all ascend together. Thank you for these incredible years. Thank you for being in this room today. Thank you for letting me share what I believe with an honesty I rarely get to offer in a meeting or a lecture. This has been genuinely one of the greatest honors of my career. To everyone in this room, hold your integrity, even when no one is watching. Cancel the noise, protect your signal. Find your rock and be the one for someone else. Rise together, always. Now go figure it out. And these are the last 10 years of my life at Tarleton State University. Students are at my home here in Nepal. Thank you for your time this evening.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gandhi, for sharing your story. And as you mentioned, we met not very long after you came to the university. And as I was listening, I couldn't help but think about the fact that, when Dr. Hurley first arrived, he very quickly got us focused on rural health as something that we had not been focused on previously as an institution, but you had. And so I can't help but think the work that you've been doing lays a better foundation for us as an institution to move in that direction. And now the university is also very focused on rural resilience, another thing that you had worked on. So I think your contributions are significant, and we're so honored to have you. I'll ask Dr. Hurley to come forward, and he will present you with here. So it is with gratitude that we present you with this year's last lecture Distinguished Speakers Award. Well, thank you, Dr. Hurley, for being here. Thank you, Dr. Gandhi, for your words. To everyone who joined us tonight, whether you're in person or online, we are so very glad that you're here. The last lecture is a celebration of both wisdom and legacy, and we hope you leave here tonight inspired to keep learning, mentoring, and exploring new ideas. Thank you all, and have a great evening.
Let's get the previous presenters.
Oh, previous presenters, if you would come up, and we'll get a group photo. That's a great idea. Thank you.